Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here today. Whether life has been a smooth journey for you lately or you're facing challenges that feel impossible to overcome, I want to remind you of something powerful. You are not alone. Let me start by painting a picture. Imagine this. You've been praying for a breakthrough for months, maybe even years. Every day, you wake up hoping that today will be the day things change, but nothing happens. The bills keep piling up, the diagnosis doesn't improve, the relationship feels more strained, or the job offer never comes. You feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. And faith? Faith feels like something that's just out of reach. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know that I see you. I understand how discouraging it can be. It's in moments like these that holding on to faith can feel almost impossible. But here's the thing, faith isn't just about believing when things are easy. True faith shows itself when life feels like it's falling apart. It means holding on, even when you can't see the outcome, trusting that there's a greater purpose behind the pain and that you're not walking this journey alone. Today we're going to talk about what it really means to hold on to faith in the middle of life's storms. We'll explore the stories of two incredible individuals, Tony Dungy, a legendary football coach who leaned on his faith even through personal tragedy, and King Hezekiah, a biblical figure who trusted God in the face of overwhelming odds. Their stories remind us that even when life feels impossible, faith can be our anchor. And stay with me, because I'll also share some practical steps you can take to strengthen your faith, no matter what you're facing right now. Let's pause for a moment and talk about something we've all experienced. Those deep, unanswered questions that keep us awake at night. Have you ever found yourself staring at the ceiling, asking, why is this happening to me? Why am I still in this season of waiting? Why did things have to go wrong? Maybe you've been doing everything right. You've been faithful, you've prayed, you've tried to stay positive, but it feels like the answers just won't come. You see others getting the breakthroughs you've been praying for, friends landing the jobs, couples sharing the pregnancy announcements, coworkers celebrating promotions, and you're left wondering, what about me? If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. The truth is, life doesn't always make sense. Sometimes the things we face seem unfair, and it's hard to see how any good could come out of them. It's like standing in the middle of a storm with the wind and rain pounding against you, unable to see even a few feet ahead. But here's what I want you to consider. What if the storm you're going through isn't meant to destroy you? What if it's meant to strengthen you, to shape you, and to draw you closer to God? It's hard to see it when you're in the middle of it, but faith is about trusting that God is working, even when you can't see the full picture. There's a beautiful quote that says, "Faith is not the belief that God will do what you want. It is the belief that God will do what is right." Holding on to faith doesn't mean we'll always understand what's happening. It means we trust that God sees what we cannot see, and He's working everything together for good, even in the midst of our pain. Maybe you're asking, but how can I hold on to faith when my circumstances feel overwhelming? How can I trust when nothing seems to be going right? I get it. Those are tough questions. And that's exactly why I want to share some stories and lessons that I believe can help. Let's start with the story of Tony Dungy. Many people know Tony as the celebrated coach who led the Indianapolis Colts to a Super Bowl victory, but his journey to success wasn't an easy one. Early in his career, Tony faced countless rejections. He had the qualifications, the experience, and the leadership skills to be a head coach, but door after door kept closing. Each rejection felt like another brick being added to an already heavy load. Anyone in his position might have thrown in the towel, but Tony didn't lose heart. He kept moving forward, clinging to his faith and trusting that God had a plan, even when things didn't make sense. But then in 2005, Tony faced the kind of heartbreak that no parent should ever have to endure. His eldest son, James, tragically passed away. The loss was devastating. Tony describes it as a moment when the ground felt like it had been ripped out from under him. The questions came flooding in. Why did this happen? How do I move forward from here? For many people, such a loss might lead to despair, anger, or even questioning their faith in God. But Tony leaned into his faith more than ever before. He turned to God for strength and comfort, choosing to trust that even in his deepest sorrow, God was still present. He didn't have all the answers, none of us do in moments like that, but he held on to the belief that God's strength would carry him through. Tony often speaks about the peace he experienced during that time, a peace that surpassed all understanding. His story reminds us that faith doesn't promise a life free from pain. It doesn't mean we won't experience storms. What it does promise is that God will walk with us through those storms, giving us the strength to keep going. Now let's shift to the story of King Hezekiah, a powerful example of faith in action during impossible circumstances. Hezekiah was the king of Judah, and during his reign, he faced one of the greatest threats in his nation's history. The Assyrian army, led by King Sennacherib, was known for its brutality and strength. They had already conquered countless nations, leaving destruction in their wake, and now they were coming for Jerusalem. Imagine being in the city at that time. You can hear the sound of marching in the distance, the war cries of the Assyrian soldiers echoing through the hills. You know the odds. This army has never lost, and Judah is no match for their strength. Fear is thick in the air, and the people are terrified. But instead of panicking or trying to rely on military strategies, Hezekiah did something remarkable. He turned to God. He went to the temple, laid out the threatening letter he had received from the Assyrian king, and prayed a heartfelt prayer for deliverance. He didn't ask for help out of pride or for his own glory. He asked so that the world would know that the God of Israel was the one true God. In 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 19, it says "Now Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God." And God responded in an incredible way. That very night, the angel of the Lord struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers, forcing the enemy to retreat. Hezekiah's faith shows us that even when the odds are stacked against us, God can do what seems impossible. So what can we learn from these stories? How do we apply these lessons when life feels overwhelming? First, we need to remember that faith isn't about ignoring our problems or pretending they don't exist. It's about choosing to focus on God's promises instead of the size of our challenges. When fear starts to creep in, remind yourself of Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, where God says "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Write this promise down and place it somewhere you'll see it every day, maybe on your bathroom mirror or your desk. Let it be a constant reminder that God is bigger than your circumstances. Faith also means being willing to take steps forward, even when you don't have all the answers. It's about trusting God enough to take the next step, even when you can't see the full path ahead. In Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6, it says "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Sometimes faith means action, taking one step at a time, even when the road ahead feels unclear. Finally, we need to trust God's timing. We live in a world that values instant results, but God's timeline is often different from ours. Psalm chapter 27, verse 14 says "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." Waiting isn't easy, but it's never wasted. It's in the waiting that God often does his greatest work in us. If you're in a season of waiting, trust that God is moving, even if you can't see it yet. So wherever you are right now, whatever storm you're facing, I want to encourage you to keep holding on to faith. God sees you, he hears you, and he is with you. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your own. In Romans chapter 8, verse 28, it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Here's something I want you to take to heart. God will make your mess into a message and your test into a testimony. The very thing that feels overwhelming right now, the storm you never wanted to face, can become the story that gives someone else hope. What seems like broken pieces today can be transformed into something beautiful tomorrow. Faith doesn't mean the absence of storms. It means knowing who is with you in the storm. So this week, when fear starts to creep in, speak God's promises out loud, write them down, pray them, and remind yourself of His faithfulness. Picture this: a ship out on the ocean surrounded by crashing waves and howling winds. The storm is raging, but the anchor holds the ship steady. That's what faith is. It's the anchor that keeps you grounded when life's storms rage. Hold on to that anchor, because God will never let you go. Now let me ask you, what storm are you trusting God to see you through right now? What's that situation where you're choosing faith over fear? Share your thoughts or testimonies in the comments below. Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs to keep going. Together, let's trust in God's promises and believe that He is working, even in the unseen. Stay strong, keep believing, and remember, you are never alone. God is with you, always.